Welcome, friends. All right, as you know, I just came back from an amazing trip with my husband. We love to take our opus out to Anza-Borrego Desert, and we love going after the rains because it's just so incredibly beautiful out there. And what we've noticed is every year you get a lot of the same flowers because of the same cactus growing out there. And at the same time, this year there was this beautiful carpet. That's the only word I can think to describe it as, this carpet of gold. It looked like tiny wheat. And it just covered the desert floor, and it was so beautiful. And at night and in the morning, it just glowed with the sun. And we always do a lot of hikes. My husband takes a lot of pictures of the flowers for me. I take a lot. I try to paint out there as often as possible. And this weekend, there was a lot of this beautiful pink flower. What I love about these flowers is these cactus. For those of you who maybe haven't visited the desert, we hike a lot. We do what's called rock scrambling. We hike all through, not on trails necessarily, but just kind of going through the desert randomly. And we love to explore. And both of us, my husband, of course, more than myself, have sat in these on accident. We've backed into them. There's a cactus called a cholla. They also call it a jumping cactus because I'm not kidding. You can walk what feels like inches from them, and it literally feels like they jump off the plant and onto your legs. And these tiny little spikes, they can penetrate anything. They stick in our shoes. They, stick in your pants. We wear these things called gaiters to protect our lower legs. And what I find so beautiful and fascinating is these such forbidding and sometimes painful plants that you really stay away from. In the spring, get these beautiful flowers that are soft and almost transparent and have the most beautiful flowers on them. And of course, there were tons this weekend with that favorite color of mine, this Quin Magenta you see me using all the time. So of course I loved that. I paint out there. And I thought today we could paint one together. I'm going to be doing it in a very wash, wet on wet type of style, and I will go through it slowly so you can follow along. Today I'm using the Princeton Dagger striper. It's 3/8 inch or number 4, and I will put that. This is a little bit different than the one I used I don't know, maybe a week ago. This one is quite a bit longer and just is much softer. This is the Neptune series, and this is the Umbria series, and it's much snappier. I think I like it a lot better. Now, this was a 1/4 inch. I just really liked how snappy this one. This one was fun. It was a little bit soft for me. I'm also going to be using, for these tiny little needles, pine needles, I'm going to be using also the Princeton Dagger striper 1/4 inch. And it's got a very tiny, tiny little tip on it. I played with it and it was perfect for just flicking these little pine needles, not pine needles, cacti needles. Deadly cacti needles, I might add. Okay. So today we'll be using our 140 pound, our 300 GSM, and this is the cold press. What I'm going to do first is just play with this piece of paper and go through some of the brush strokes so you can see. Then that way, I make one tutorial kit per tutorial. And if you do choose to purchase this, it'll have the brush strokes you can practice. You'll get a color swatch, and you can kind of practice all this first and see it up close, which, as I always share with you, in college, after my discourses or my art class, I would always go up and look at the teacher's painting because I thought that was so fun. And sorry, we've got some squirrels here in the background. We've got a red-tailed hawk that just flew in the background. So I'm really keeping my eye out here behind me. So anyway, I'm going to show you some of the brush strokes, and then that way, if you purchase the kit, they're $25, and you actually even get the original, which I think is really fun. I used to love that in my college classes. I could get up close and really see what she did. So let's just play with this dagger brush. And I will link all of these. Honestly, I really have had a lot more success with the Princeton Umbria series versus the Neptune. So much snappier. All right, let's create some very thin lines here. Let me go into, let's play with some orange here. And the fun thing about these brushes, if you use them on their side, as I kind of shared a few weeks ago when I did the little video on the dagger, you really can get these wonderful, wonderful thin stripes. Let's just play with that. So look at that. Just playing with those, and do a page of these. Very, very, very light pressure. What's really fun about these dagger brushes is you can get this incredibly thin line. And then at the same time, you can get this thicker line if you still hold it at an angle, maybe at 2 o'clock, and press down a little harder, and you get a little thicker line, just like that. Practice a page of these, just noticing how the different pressure gives you different widths of line strokes. Now, if I wanted to use it on the side of my brush, which I'm going to be doing today, watch how thick a line I can get. I'm placing it on its side. Look at that. And how beautiful is this? It's almost like an ombre. I started here. Let me do that one more time for you. Going to use a little more water on my brush because I'm going all the way across. So if I don't put enough water, I'm not going to be able to make it all the way across my brush, my page, without drying out. So pressing down using the side of my brush. Now see, as you can see here, I got a dry brush effect. Okay. So I loved that you can get all 3 of these with this brush. I think it's really fantastic. Now let me show you how I did these petals. Most are going to, I believe, sometimes I don't watch a lot of tutorials on how to use a brush because I like to kind of just grab it and use it, and I may come up with a different way of using it, and if I had watched the so-called how to use it, I might not ever discover on my own. This is how I used it, which I thought was really fun. I'm using the side of the brush, and let me just draw. So what I also think is really fun with these cactus flowers is they almost remind me a little bit of a peony. They're kind of this cup shape like this. Okay? And what I did with this brush is I placed the tip going towards the outer edge of the petal, which I believe years ago I learned to do it this way. And you could probably do both, but play with it and see what you like to do. So let's just create that first petal coming from the mid of the flower cup. And I'm just going to press down and a little bit on the side, wiggling like that. Okay, so I've got this perfect little petal. Now let me go into that and just practice that again. So I've got the side of my brush. Now I'm gently going to lean into turning my brush a bit to get that thicker stroke. So starting like this and then just moving it like so, and then twisting and coming to a point. Look at how perfect that little petal is. Let's do another one here. We want to make sure all our petals are facing towards the middle of this little cup. Side of my brush and coming down towards that middle section where the ovary, as they call it, of the flower is. Again, I'm using the point out, then pushing into the side of my brush. I kind of twist and lift up. Look at that. Perfect little petals. So that's what we're going to be practicing. And you can practice on here. Let me get a little darker color for you. I didn't see any purple flowers, but I want you to be able to see this color. Just practice placing your brush on its side like this, and then pushing into the brush and kind of squiggling it almost. Okay, like that. Do it again. Press and then flatten out on its side and bring it in. So yes, a little bit different than what I've seen, but you know, this is something I just kind of naturally picked it up and used it in this way. Let's do a little outside petal here like this. Pushing and kind of turning and bringing it around like that. Kind of like that. So I think this makes a really pretty petal. Okay, you could even go down here and have a petal coming out, something like that. But I really liked using this using this brush on its side. Point up, turning it, because it gave me such a wide natural petal shape. Okay, so there's some of the brush strokes. Let's go ahead and get started on our beautiful cactus painting. I'm going to be sharing too. I want to do a little tutorial for those of you. I know you like sketching and drawing, and I sketched and drew all kinds of them. I tried to get pictures from every perspective. I told my husband, take pictures from the side, from the top, all different. So I got all these fun, here's a left, here's a right, here's one kind of, you can see the little stamen in there. I got lots of bud pictures, one that was just starting to flower. And I think I will do a tutorial on these. And that way you can kind of get a feel for how I sketched them. I sketched pages and pages of them. Okay, I'm going to start with the flower first, okay? Let's grab our Quin Magenta, my absolute favorite color. So happy that they were so prevalent out there in the desert. And you don't want to have too much water. So you can always just press against the side of your well and let some of the water come out. You want it that tea consistency. And now the point facing outwards. And I'm going to make this first petal, laying it down on its side. And I'm kind of squiggling it around, just like that. Okay? There we go. There's my first petal. I might even make that a little bit thicker at the bottom. What's fun is you also have that point, so you can use that point. And then I'm going to make, because the ball, the ovary in there, the middle section of this ball is down here, this cup. I'm going to bring this one around and create this leaf petal like this. Do another one over here, just like we did in the practice. And then twisting. So I found it was really, again, similar to a peony, which I thought was interesting because I've never noticed that before. Now I want to do maybe a couple petals coming out of the bottom here. So I've got my point this way, and look at how thin that is. But yet when I turn it on its side, it's very thick. So like this, gradually twisting, turning on its side, and back up. Okay, I'm going to do another one over here. Point, turn to the side, and up like that. Isn't that pretty? Let's grab a little bit more water. And now I'm going to go around in the back. 1 second, let me get my picture here that I took so I can look at it. Okay, I'm going to do one coming up here like this, and then some up here, coming down. And I'm leaving room here for those little yellow stamens. And I believe they might call those pistils, the little round piece at the end. Here's another one. Again, I'm leaving room in between. So these do, I think, resemble almost a peony. Like this. Make a couple out here. They were quite wide. I felt like when the peonies open, they are quite wide. Most of these that I took pictures of out there were pretty full. I'm rinsing my brush, washing it, rinsing, and just tapping on my paper towel. And then I'm going to go in and add some darker value of that Quin Magenta, meaning more paint, less water. And here I am going to use the point. That's what's so wonderful about this brush. And I'm just going to go in and kind of dab in here and there, maybe like that. Just using the point. And that really creates some pretty interest. And if you go in while it's wet, you're going to get this really beautiful blending. Just tracing around maybe some of the edges. Okay, I think that's pretty good. Yeah, I like that. Okay, we're going to let this dry. I'm washing and rinsing my brush, just lightly scraping off that excess water. And now this is the great part, because I created this whole cacti part of the plant with this brush, using it on each side because it can get such a broad stroke. It was quite easy. Let's go into our green. I'm always using the sap and the olive green here. I might add in some of that brand Sennelier because it's dark. Although most of the cactus I found quite light. Now let's start with a lighter value because we can always go darker. So I've got quite a bit of water in there. And let's see, make it come out this way. So using the side of my brush, look at that. I can get this huge sweeping. Now I'm just using water. Okay. And I'm not completely filling in the whole piece. I'm leaving some lighter spots, some darker spots. Okay, then just leave it and let it kind of blend. Now, while it's wet, I'm going to go in, grab some of this green gold, and I'm going to tap it and let it, whoop. It has to be a little wet for it to drip like this. And just do some of that, because that looks like where those little cactus prickles, cactus pieces come out. And I'm going to let that set and spread and kind of do its thing. Now, while it's wet, I will go in and add in a few of these little buds. So back into that Quin Magenta. And we want to, I'm going to do a couple buds. We want to vary them a bit. Let's go in here, the point of my brush out. And I like how it's spreading like that. I'm going to do one here, like so. I might do another one right here. So this is very wet and wet. Now, if it really bothers you how much that is spreading, you can always go in and pick it up. And then I'm going to go in and create these little pieces that connect the flower to the cactus plant. They almost look like a little ball. Like that. Just tapping in. Okay? Might even dab in a few more places, like so. And there we go. We're probably good to go in now and tap in the little yellow dots in the middle. I'm going to grab some of my cad yellow. There we go. And I will be using just the tip of the brush and making these little dots like so. There we go. Okay. I saw a lot of those right in the middle of these plants. I'm going to rinse my brush, wash it, rinse it. And once this dries, what I think I will do is go in and create a little bit more definition in these. Maybe tap in a little bit more, like that. These little buds were just like, they almost look like a little knob. And I always, for my mind, it's easier if I always try to find a shape that my mind recognizes. That's just helpful for me. There we go. Again, as this dries, I will go in. It's really kind of cool here today, so things aren't drying as quickly as they might. So this will take a little bit of time to dry. Let's see if I can go in there with a little darker green and see if it kind of picks it up. Might just spread. There we go. Something like that. Just going in, this is with that green gold, Winsor Newton. Like that. Now the last part, I'm going to use this tiny little 1/4 inch Princeton Dagger striper, they call it. And it is in that dagger shape. I'm going to pick up that yellow. I've also, if in the past when I've painted cactus, if the cactus is dark enough, I've used a white gel pen. I don't believe this time my cactus is dark enough to do that, but that's also really pretty. And let's just very, very lightly come from these dark spots and add in these crazy little thorns. What I've noticed when I see these is they usually seem to come in a pair of two, not always. There's usually one really long one and then a little short one. I'm kind of trying to avoid the wet parts, and I'm using a rather concentrated form of the paint because this is still kind of wet. So I'm just adding those in. I know this is hard to see. I can hold it up for you. And then I'm adding in some, maybe sticking out from behind, like this. And I'll try to add a few in here. Maybe coming out of these. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, pretty happy with that. I'll hold this up so you can see that. I'm going to go in with this little dagger brush since I'm using it and just add a little bit more detail to that. And this is what you can do, friends. The more your painting begins to dry now, again, my painting's drying a little bit slower because it is cold out, and I can just go in and add some darker touches like that. So you get a little bit more of the detail of those little buds. Like that. Maybe a little bit hard to see. Maybe on this one. Okay, I think I feel pretty good about this. The only thing I might add in, I've got an awful lot of white space here, is maybe a really light, watery version of a couple petals here. So using a lot of water. Now see, that was even more than I wanted. So I'm going to pick some of that up. Very watery version, light value. And just add in some little pieces here and there. Something like that. I think that's really enough. I don't want to get too crazy in here. I like this white space that I achieved. Okay, I think we're done here. I think this turned out really pretty. Definitely play with it and play with this. I will link this little dagger striper and the 4 dagger striper. They're really fun. And happy painting. I hope you'll think about maybe getting the little tutorial. You get the swatch of colors. You'll get the little practice strokes. And of course you get the original that I painted here. And you can come back and watch it while you paint. All right, everybody, I will talk to you soon. Thank you.